As you can see, outside we have clay courts that we cover for the winter in a bubble kind of structure, and then we have hard courts out here. Basically, my role is I'm responsible for the performance tennis for Tennis Ireland, but I'm a coach. So for half of the year, I'm on the road with players at tournaments, ATP tournaments, WTA tournaments, ladies events, and I spent about 10 years with juniors on the tour before that. And to be very honest with you, tennis was way behind in performance analysis until the last couple of years. It's suddenly become a bit of a buzz in the last couple of years to use performance analysis, but before that, even though you'd imagine looking at TV and looking at Sky and Eurosport that it must be big in tennis, but it's not actually that big in tennis. Even now when you go to ATP tournaments, you don't see cameras at the back of the courts that often. And certainly not at junior tournaments. Even at Grand Slams you don't see it. It's not used that much still. Now on TV some courts are televised and they have all stats, but on the other courts it's not really used. And I have to do my own stats. When I travel to a tournament with a player, I don't have the luxury of having a performance analysis with me. It's normally just me, the player, and sometimes a physical trainer. But we don't have the money to have somebody to do that all the time, so I have to do it myself. And in some cases I get the player to help me out to do it as well. But I'm going to run through a session because Joe asked me to do something fairly practical. So the idea is I want to run through the process that we use within the centre with players. And I'm lucky today that this is Georgia. Georgia is one of the best under 14s in Europe. And she just happens to be training here, so she said she would stay. She gave out a lot. She wanted to go home and get her dinner, but she said she would stay. And this is Lazo. Lazo's one of the coaches. He's just finished playing as a pro player, and now he's in coaching. So he's going to help us out a little bit on the court as well. So if we can just gather around this screen, firstly, I'll just explain the way that I use it, and then on the court I will give you some examples. I want to come from the coach's point of view. So we have the information, what do we do? So this is the process, if you like. It starts off with the match analysis. So imagine 2 weeks ago, she was at an international tournament. We took the video of her match and she's come back to the training centre. So it starts with the match analysis. Then we have the intervention between the coach and the player. So I'll go through this in detail in a few minutes. So basically that's where the coach sits with the player, goes through the last goal setting for the last tournament, shows the analysis from the matches, and then helps to set the goals again. Then the coach will set up the training plan based on this. So what exercises, what drills will we use in training to try to help Georgia to change these issues or develop some of the strengths within the matches. And then the last stage for us is the session implementation, and then it goes back to the match analysis again. Everybody with me on that? Do you understand what I mean? Okay. So there are a couple of key things under each of those headings for me. Firstly, when we're analysing the match, we need to know exactly what we're looking for. I don't want to know 15 or 20 things. Even at the highest level, I only want to know a couple of very simple things. I'll give you an example. I was away at some tournaments over the last couple of weeks with a guy who's pretty high ATP ranked. He's playing at the highest level. And all I really wanted to know was how many backhands does he hit in the net from a specific part of the court and his percentage of serve in one area. I only wanted two really simple things. I don't want to know 12 or 14 things. It's always one or two really simple things for me. And I like to relate this to international norms. So when we started using performance analysis, the first thing we did was we did some research where I got the coaches to go to top international tournaments under 14, top international tournaments under 18, ATP Futures tournaments, ATP Challenger tournaments. And we gathered all the information. We had a criteria as to what we're looking for. So they were very simple things. What's the average length of a rally? What shots create the most forcing or winners at that level? Very simple things. Percentage of serves at that level, because we don't really know at under 14 and under 18, because as I said, we don't have the statistics from all these tournaments. So we wanted to find that out. And when we found that out, then we were able to relate this information back to someone like Georgia, who is an under 14 player. So for example, if Georgia is playing a tournament and she's serving at 50%, we know that the best players in Europe are serving at 62, 63%. So we know that's very important for her to change. just as an example. Good camera angles. In our sport, it's quite a small area, so I think it makes it a little bit easier for us. We can hang a camera at the back of a tennis court with a fisheye lens on it, and we can take the whole court. We don't need to have tons of camera, but in actual fact on this court we have cameras surrounding the court, but that's to be very specific about different areas. We'll show you that in a few minutes when we're practicing. But we have a camera on the forehand, a camera for footwork, a camera for backhand, a camera for volley. We have a camera overhead to look at the overall perspective of the court, and then we have the opposite on this side. But we don't have the luxury. We go to a tennis tournament, we don't have that. We bring a camera in a bag, we stick the camera on the back fence, and we video it like that. And a camera worth probably 200 euros. It's not very high tech. When we're doing the player intervention, try to be positive, constructive, and positive again. You know, the sandwich approach. I don't like to dig into all the negatives straight away. I like to start with the positives. A couple of things that we could change, go back to the positives again. The videos need to be prepared beforehand. So we need to prepare the exact videos we want to show the player beforehand. And preferably to be able to show it in slow motion. Because our game happens so fast, I like to be able to show it very slowly. Again, going through simple things. I also like to ask a lot of questions. I don't like to give a ton of information. It was very interesting, the last presentation. But I feel the same. I don't want to give tons of information. I want to bring the information out of the player. So I'd like to use questioning as much as possible. And then I want to set specific goals with the player, have an agreement with the player that we need to change this, and have a time that we should change it within. So it's useless if I think that Georgia needs to serve at 62% and she thinks it's okay to be 55%. She's not going to change. She's very stubborn. You know? So you need to make sure there is agreement. And then it's very important to set up the training plan and the drills. You have to keep a couple of things take a couple of things into consideration here. If I was at a tournament and I videoed a match on a Wednesday and the player had another match on a Thursday, my approach to the drills that I would use would be very different than if I had a player for 6 weeks before the next tournament. Do you understand why? Because if you have a very short time frame, it has to be quick changes. And a lot of the time at tournaments, I'm looking at decision making. I'm not necessarily looking at changing technique or changing other areas. I'm just looking at quick decisions that I can change overnight that will help the player to be better the next day. I like to use video in training. I think it's very important to use it within the matches, but I use it a lot in training. I want my player in training to see exactly what's happening as much as possible, from a tactical point of view, from a technical point of view. So I don't believe that you should only use it in the matches. I think it should be used a lot in training, which I'll demonstrate in a few minutes. I like to make the training as much like a game as possible, and for us, it can only be like a game when the player can firstly control the ball. So if I want the player to hit more cross court and then hit down the line, I need to know that my player can control the ball firstly. So our sessions are broken into sometimes control, sometimes decision making. I know we're not a lot of tennis players here, but I'll show you exactly on the court what I mean. You can relate it to your own sport. How do we know if she's better? At the end of the day, how do we really know if she's better? Well, if she does it better in a match. So at the end of the day, the only way we know for sure that she's actually doing this a lot better is, can she do it now in a match? So the next goal for the coach should be open it up into match situations and see if the depth is still the same. So we'll do the same exercise, except now it's completely open. We leave the targets here, but the ball goes in, you play. Play the point out, okay? What's your goal at the point? And if you have a short ball, okay.